Okay, this unit is going to be all sorts of problems with dealing with percentages. So we're going to start out kind of reviewing what a percent is and how to change between a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. So if you remember, a percentage is a part to whole ratio. So where the whole is always 100. So when they say it's a ratio, like if you said, I got a 20% on my test, which wouldn't be good. You could do 20 out of 100 if there was 100 questions. So that's why it's a ratio. This would be your part. This would be the whole. Okay, so we're going to complete the charts below. And yes, we are starting on handout 2. If you're wondering, we don't need handout 1. Okay, so if you look at the little drawings here, you might remember these kind of things from elementary school. There's 100 of them. So if you count, there's 10, 20, 5. So that would be 25%. And I make my percent signs like that. I just connect mine. You don't have to do it that way. Okay. And then the fraction, the percent's on the top, and the whole is always 100. And then you should know how to turn that into a decimal. We just divide 25 divided by 100. Or if you read 25 hundredths, you can write it like that, 25 hundredths. The next one, they already tell you that it's 85%. So that would be 85 over 100. And then you can either read that as 85 hundredths, and you can have a 0 in front if you want. It's not wrong if you don't. Another way I do it is with the percent. You move your decimal back 2 spaces. So it would be right here. So that's how we get 0.85. Okay, now they give us 40 out of 100. So whenever it's over 100, you know that that's a percent. So we know that's 40%. And then we can move that 2 spaces back to make it 0.4. And you can add the 0 if you want, and the 0 in the front, but those you don't have to have. So a percent can be written using a percent bar, which I think is very confusing, or a percent proportion. And you should recognize that word from last unit. And that's the one that I favor. But I am going to attempt to explain these percent bars, but I've never really found kids that like them. Usually it's more for when you're first learning in elementary. So if we set up the percent bar for the fraction below of 1/5. So if we have 5 as a whole, so we have 5 parts. So this box would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we know all percents are based out of 100. So I'm going to put 100% here. So we have to think of like what number could you do 5 times? So you could do 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. And so if we want 1/5 of it, it's just one box of it, and so it would be 20%. Also, you can do the fraction as 1/5, and all percents are out of 100. And so 5 times 20 gets you to 100. So you do 1 times 20, and we have 20 over 100, which we know is 20%. Okay, the next one, 3/4. So there's 4 parts, or that's the whole. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 100%. And so we need to split them up into 25s, 50, 75. And so if we want 3/4, we want 3 of them, so that gets us to 75%. Or we can do 3/4, and then we put 100 on here. And you can do cross multiply and divide if you want. So you can do 300 divided by 4, and you get 75. Again, make sure you always slow down and rewind if I'm going too fast or if you don't understand it. So percent bars can be used to estimate the percentage. So we're going to try to figure out what is 50% of 50. And some of you probably already know, because you should know that 50% is half. So you should know already that it's 25. But if we set up this percent bar, so we want to go all the way over to 50. And this would be the 100. And so this would be your 50%. This is percent. And so then this would be 25. So 50% is half of the bar. And so it's half of the total. Another way, and you're going to want to write this down because it's so much simpler. When you're working with percents, if you turn the percent into a decimal, which you should know how to do, that skill is where you take the percent. So we have 50%. And if you don't see a decimal, you know it's always right here. And we move it back 2 spaces. So 50% is the same as 0.5. You can keep the 0 there if that helps. And so you turn the percent to a decimal. The of means to multiply. And so then you multiply, and then you multiply by the other number. In this case, it kind of happens to be the same thing almost. And when you multiply those, you would get 25%. I mean, sorry, not percent, just 25. So what is 25% of 50? So you can set up that bar graph again if you want. And you can pause it and see if you get what I get here. But this is definitely not the way that I do it. I mean, you wouldn't want to do this all the time. That's 12.5. That would be 25. So we got 25% and 50%. So 25% of 50. So we also know 25% is 1/4. So you could do 1/4 of 50. And so basically you're doing 1/4 times 50 on your calculator, or taking 50 divided by 4. Or we can turn 25% into 0.25. Of is multiply and times it by 50. And you should get 12.5. Okay, what is 10% of 50? So again, if you just do what I'm saying, if we turn this into, we're going to move it. So here's my 10 for 10%. Here's the decimal. If we don't see it, we're going to move it back 2 spaces. So it's 0.1. And then we're going to times by 50, because of means to multiply. And your answer should be 5. So 10% of 50 is 5. I think it's way easier than using those bars. Okay, what is 20% of 80? So again, I'm going to turn that into 0.2 times 80. And you should get 16. 0.75, because we're moving it back 2 spaces, times 200. And we should get 150. And always check to see if your answers make sense. So like 75% is more than half. So this should definitely be more than 100. And you're going to go ahead and do homework 2 using your calculator. And if you look at it while I'm talking right now, or maybe come back to it, it asks you to do the bars on the side, but you do not have to. If you want to do my method where you just turn it into a decimal and multiply, that's fine. And before you get to the homework, I just want to make sure that you're aware that you should have went over it with the bell ringers, but if we have a decimal like 0.75, then to get it to a percent, we do the opposite. We move it over to the right, so it'd be 75%. So 0.32, we move it over, 32%. Okay, if we have Sometimes you have 0.123. So if we move it over twice, it ends up here. So the percentage is 12.3%. So percentages can have decimals in them. And you will find that on your homework. So make sure you check your answers on your homework also.